Welcome back to Call Time with Katie Birnbaum. I am so pumped for this episode because I'm interviewing not only one of my best friends on this planet, but also someone who is, in my opinion, a true bona fide celebrity, and perhaps more importantly, someone who started in theater but went in a slightly different direction, which is always really interesting to me here on Call Time. So without further ado, the hilarious, the amazing, the glamorous Catherine Cohen.
Oh my God, you flatter me. I'm so thrilled to be here on Call Time with Katie Birnbaum. You look absolutely stunning. Are you wearing a highlighter or is that a natural glow?
I am wearing a highlighter. Thank you
It
for
looks really
noticing.
good.
I felt like I had to look good because your makeup is always so good.
I did this eyeliner 3 days ago, and because my skin is so dry, it stays on.
I just want to note that Catherine is like a true pro. I'm going to mention this when I introduce you, but she has her own podcast. So she's has a beautiful, expensive mic that she's holding, and it's making me look very amateur in comparison.
No, this is actually I use this mic for voiceover because now that it's pandemic, I do all any voiceover thing I'm doing is all remote. So this is come I can't speak. This has come very in handy.
It's
This has
come in
come very in
handy.
handy.
It's come in handy.
I haven't spoken to anyone today. This is
Didn't you go to the doctor? You definitely spoke to your doctor.
Yeah, but he was like, okay, first of all, he was kind of like making jokes. I don't love when a doctor's like making jokes. I'm like, okay, like so just full disclosure for the listeners out there. Hey, first of all, hey. Second of all, hi. Third of all, I went to get scoped today because my voice was hoarse and I was worried something was wrong with me because I'm very dramatic. And the doctor like numbed my nose and throat and he was like, he's like, it'll just last 2 or 3 months. So I was like, and he was like, 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, why is that a joke? I'm like, okay, I'm in pain. No, he was very nice. And apparently I'm just hoarse because I have acid reflux because I'm, as my boyfriend calls me, I'm the Cheeto queen. I had a lot of Cheetos this weekend.
Okay, brag about your boyfriend though.
I know, major braggina.
Maybe
It's
I'll have him on the show.
He'd be a great guest. Um he's been in acting since he was a baby boy.
Yeah, I know. And a New Yorker and famously in the Cruel Intentions musical. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and he was also in the national tour of Little House on the Prairie.
Was he?
Come through, King. Yeah, he did that before he took a year off before he went to college and did that tour.
That's iconic. I never knew
I
that.
can't believe you don't know that because I say this with so much love. He talks about it all the time.
Wow. Before we go on and really get into it, I'm going to do a little introduction. Are you drinking out of a Tupperware?
Yeah, and do you like this reusable straw, saving the environment one girl at a time?
You are basically a woman in STEM, I would say.
Exactly.
So I'll do a little intro to Catherine for those of you who may not be familiar, though you absolutely should. Catherine graduated from Princeton University, where we famously met. I've had a lot of Princeton guests on my show of late, which I think is
Really? That's amazing. Who else?
I had Abby Jean Baptiste. You know her.
She was younger than me.
Yeah, but she's like taking over the world. She's assistant directing like everything on Broadway. It's
That's amazing. We should all hang out.
we should hang out.
It's very rare for Princeton people to be in the arts, so it's always refreshing.
It's rare, but I really do think we're growing like a
Yeah.
little mafia. And then I
Yeah.
had Hans last week, as you know, which was
Adore.
a
My
dream.
favorite.
And I'm sure we'll talk about Triangle later. After that, she moved to New York in the hopes of becoming an actress, which she is now,
Sad.
but also pivoted slightly into fields like comedy and writing. Today, she hosts a weekly cabaret show at Alan Cummings' East Village venue, Club Cumming, which I believe is it fully back already?
It's not fully back. We're doing our first show back on Wednesday with limited capacity.
So are you just gonna like die when you get on the stage?
Yeah, well, I was on the stage. We did like in the fall we did a Zoom show where I was on the stage without an audience, which was crazy. So this will be a welcome change. I'm nervous though. I'm like, don't you feel now like every little thing you do is so draining?
Yes.
So it's just like it's a lot. And like talking for an hour straight and singing for an hour straight. It's gonna be, but I'm thrilled.
I think your adrenaline is just going to be so high, it'll like
Totally.
carry you through, and then you'll be like completely exhausted.
I can't wait.
So she does that. We can't wait. Also, she does a cabaret solo show, The Twist She's Gorgeous, which won the prestigious Best Newcomer Award in 2019 at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. She's appeared on TV shows like High Maintenance, Broad City, and in the Kumail Nanjiani Issa Rae movie Lovebirds. Her book of poetry, God, I Feel Modern Tonight, came out earlier this year. She's written for publications like The New Yorker, The Cut, Split Sider, and Huffington Post. And as I mentioned earlier, she co hosts a popular podcast on all things love and sex, Seek Treatment. Is there anything I missed? Like big?
Not to be a bitch, but I have an advice column for W Magazine.
Oh, I
I'm
forget.
joking. I'm so flattered. Thank you for that nice intro. Um, sometimes I'm like, what? Yeah, sometimes I'm like, what do I do? Because you know when you feel so busy, but like I literally don't know what I do all day. But here, it's nice to hear that intro. I'm like, okay, I do. I'm definitely doing stuff.
No, it's I think everyone feels that way, especially in the arts and especially after this year, because it can feel like what have we been doing for a year? But when I look at your resume, I just think like, what can't she do?
Oh, stop. Oh, hush.
I want to start off though. This I don't want to sound like I'm making my own guest justify her presence on this show because obviously I asked you to come on.
This should be good.
And I fully believe that what you have to do has to do with theater, but I want to reiterate that you
Mm.
come from a theater background. That was your entry point into comedy and all these other things that you do. So I want to start at the beginning. What was your first experience with theater? And was there a moment where you were like, God, I have to do this?
I love theater. I think the main thing is when you're a kid and you have like a good singing voice, they're like, put her in the musical. And then that's kind of if you just like you're like in theater by default. So if you're like silly or loud or whatever, you're like, okay, I'm doing theater now. And so yeah, I started doing it. My first big memory was in the first grade. I had a solo in the school play called It's Lonely Way Out in Left Field. It's
Is
lonely
that a
way out in left field. That's how it went. I am hoarse, and I blew the crowd away.
so you always
Um,
had a singing voice, like you were singing since you can remember?
Absolutely, I love to sing. Anyway, so that's how it started, and then I just same as you, started doing it in school, out of school, as much as possible.
And then you got to Princeton and you
But I
started out.
want to be clear, I never got the parts I really wanted, and that was formative.
What were the parts you really wanted? Like,
The lead.
so what were you playing? Like the sassy sidekick usually?
I mean, even I would have loved to have that. I was always getting like these small parts, like playing the grandma or like,
Oh
just
no.
like that was my vibe. And I was just like, but I knew like my confidence was unshakable. I was like, this is obviously wrong. I was like, who's gonna kind of correct this? And it turns out it was me. But that I was always just like, I just had a sense of like, I'm paying my dues. I'm waiting for my time.
That's hilarious that you played a grandma. There's nothing funnier to me than a teenager in like old age makeup.
No, you'll love this. When we did Pippin at my high school, I played the grandmother, and Billy played Pippin's son. My little brother. So technically, I was Billy's great grandmother in a play, and we're 2 years apart.
That's amazing. So then you got to Princeton and you were like, I want to keep doing this. Like, how did that happen? And I remember, because I'm famously younger than you, uh,
Okay, brag.
you didn't really start to do comedy stuff at Princeton until later, correct?
Yeah, I was like scared when I got to Princeton. First of all, I like did the whole. I auditioned for some BFA programs and stuff because I was like, I want to be an actress. God, it was so traumatic. I was like, this sucks. I got into a few programs that like weren't great and weren't worth going to, and I was like, okay, I want to be like an academic. Let's freaking go, girl. And then when I got to Princeton, I was like, I want to audition for Quipfire. But at the time, which is the improv group on campus, but at the time there were only men in the group. There were these like tall, skinny, hot guys, and I was like, I'm way too nervous. There's no way I could. I just didn't have the confidence. And I even turned to this guy who I oh my god, this is juicy. This this guy on my OA trip, this like pre-school backpacking trip, who had a girlfriend but made out with me. Not my fault. I didn't know. I'm a girl's girl, and I turned to him and I was like, I want to audition for the improv group, and he was like, Why? Are you like into that? And I was like, Oh no.
That changed his opinion of you. You were no longer like hot to him.
Yeah, and it changed my opinion of him and my opinion of myself. I was like, oh yeah, maybe that's not my thing. Like that's I'm not a guy. Like so then I didn't start doing comedy until honestly until I met some of the writers of the Triangle show who wrote me these really funny parts and they were really encouraging. Um and they're like, you should be doing comedy. And I was like, I literally was like, what stand-up comedy are there girls who do it?
do want to share that the first time I met, I don't think you even remember this because there's no reason you would, but the first time we interacted was after I had seen you in the Triangle
Oh yeah, you told me this.
Freshman Week show. And you did this number called Cougar,
The best number.
the best number. And I was so starstruck. And I saw you later that night at Ivy, brag. And I was like, and I got up the courage to come up to you. And I was like, you were so amazing.
Oh
The
my
Triangle
God.
Freshman Week
I
show.
was nice, right?
You were very nice. But who knew that would spark the friendship of a
I
lifetime?
know. I know. I'm so thank God we became friends. Thank God we met a
Thank
freshman and a
God we
senior.
met.
No one saw it coming.
Exactly.
I want to apologize to the viewer. I'm sorry that I have two drinks. I find it very obnoxious.
I
Anyways,
didn't even notice, but maybe the
fine.
viewers would have. So I'm
Yeah,
glad you cleared the air on
I
that.
had to address the controversy before things got out of hand.
So we did Triangle together. You and through these Triangle writers that you met, we ended up doing it. And I just had Hans on, and we had an in-depth discussion about like sort of what makes Triangle unique because it is this combination of theater and comedy. Do you think of it that
Mm-hmm.
way? Do you still think about it when you work? You can say no.
I feel so grateful for it. I think it's so cool that students write the show. I think it's so special. I think I would have liked to be a writer, but once again, I didn't. I just didn't. I was too nervous, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't start writing until like after I graduated. Honestly, the first thing I wrote was the first like funny thing I wrote was my class day speech because I was like at Princeton you get to pick two people to give like a funny speech at graduation, and my friend Dan, our friend Dan, who was encouraging me to start doing comedy, he was like, we should do the speeches, and we like would edit each other's and we helped each other, and then we got to do them, and then
Wow.
he really encouraged me when I moved to New York. He and then other Princeton alums who had done Triangle, Halcyon Person, who now is a super successful TV writer. You should have her on the show. John Weed, who now is like a literal professional mathematician, and Clayton Rathel, and all of us got together and we started doing sketch comedy in the city. And I was like, this is what I said. I was like, I'll be in the group, but I don't want to write anything. And they're like, you have to write something. And then that kind of changed my whole life.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your transition into New York because I remember very specifically this summer after you graduated, you did this like what was it like a theater program essentially because you were like I want to be a musical theater actress, but
Yeah.
then
Oh
at the end
God,
of the
it
day
makes
you
me like
found
cringe.
yourself writing and doing sketch comedy and starting to do stand up and things. So what was that like journey like?
Thank God. Oh my God, I remember my first New York apartment. You came over and we got dumplings at Vanessa's Dumplings in the East Village, and I
Yep.
was like, I live here next to a brick. I was like, I have a brick wall in my apartment.
Yeah.
Um. Well, because I had done the apprentice program at the Williamstown Theater Festival one summer in college, I had been introduced to the Upright Citizens Brigade improv theater, and we got to take improv class every day when we were apprentices. And I was like, this is the best thing. It blew my mind. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever done. This is heaven on earth. And I knew I was like, when I moved to New York, I'm going to take improv classes, and that's how all the comedy stuff started. Because I started meeting people through UCB.
I feel like at first you were doing UCB improv and you were on Mod
Mm-hmm.
Night, and you were doing some like sort of standard stand up,
Uh
how I
huh.
would describe it. But now your comedy, and correct me if I'm wrong, I definitely see as this like intersection of musical theater specifically and comedy, almost like vaudeville because you're singing and you're telling stories and you're making people laugh. Do you see it that way? Like, how did you fall into that nexus?
Yeah, totally. I remember very specifically. I'd been doing the comedy stuff, and then some friends of mine who were doing the sketch show called The Three Busy Debras, which is now a TV show on Adult Swim. They it's amazing. They had been doing the show at the Annoyance Theater, which is no longer, but was really cool. And as a joke, they were like, "We're going to do a Kickstarter and we're going to rent out Carnegie Hall and do a sketch show there." And they did it, and they asked me, they were like, will you, they knew I could sing, and they're like, will you do this song at the end of our show like as a bit? And I was like, of course, that'd be amazing. And so I went to rehearse it with them, and I
Okay, so
hadn't
you
sung.
literally started your career at Carnegie Hall.
It was like this joke where I was like an audience plant who like stood up and sang at the end. But anyways, I hadn't sung in years, and when I went to that rehearsal and I sang with them, I left and I started crying because I missed singing so much, and I was like, I have to do something about this. And so my friend John Almond, you know John, he's the best ever. He wrote he does everything, but he recently released a children's book.
Oh, yes.
Um,
I know him, yes.
the Audra, what is
Yeah.
it from Ada?
It's like from Audra to something
It's so good.
musical.
I have a copy of it here. Anyways, he's a genius. He was like, "Hey, they do this thing. This is all coming back to me now." He's like, "They do this thing at 54 Below where it's like a cabaret workshop. So you what? I'm like, what was that? I guess I applied. I'm like, this is all coming back to me now. Oh, coming. I applied to do that cabaret workshop because he was like, he's from Houston too, and he was like, I think you should try and doing music and comedy together. So I did that, and I wrote a song with Henry Kapersky, who I've written lots of songs with, and that's when it all started clicking.
Do you view that as like your big break?
No.
Do you
There was
do you
like no one there.
Well, I definitely see that though as like as a third party, a somewhat objective observer. I see that as like certainly a turn that your career took, and that's where I view it as like completely taking off.
Oh, well, I definitely view it as like a pivotal creative moment.
Yeah,
Big break to me implies like I'm still waiting for that. I'm like definitely
you've
put me in
had it.
I'm like put me in something for once for longer than 5 seconds. That's where I'm at professionally, but I'm trying to be patient. No, I'm joking. Yes, that was a pivotal moment, and then after that, I was like, let's write more songs. I want to book a show at the Duplex, do a half hour. That's when things really started taking off. And then around then is when I finally, after like five years in New York, that's when I finally got like a manager and agents who then helped me book an hour at Joe's Pub, and then that's when things were like really picking up.
Do you view what you do as primarily comedy or primarily singing or both?
Definitely not singing, but I'm also like, I don't know, the comedy. I'm sure there are comedians who would say I'm not a comedian, which is fine. I literally don't care.
But I remember sort of around this same time when you were starting to do your shows at Joe's Pub, um, there was this great big spread in the New York Times art section with an amazing picture of you literally on the cover. But the article was all about how performers like you and other performers we know, like Larry Owens and Natalie Walker, how it seemed like there was this movement of comedians who are drawing on their theatrical roots and sort of changing what we think of as comedy. Do you think you sort of sparked this movement, or do you view yourself as part of that movement?
I think I was definitely part of it. Yeah, that community that I was a part of, I mean, still am, but now people are all doing different kinds of things. But that was the most exciting time. I think it started honestly with two comedians, Josh Sharp and Aaron Jackson, who would do these like musical comedy shows. They wrote this amazing musical at UCB called Fucking Identical Twins, and they're geniuses. And then there was like the Matt Rogers and the Bowen Yang, and they were in a group called Pop Roulette that would do songs with all these NYU kids. And then, Larry, who's like amazing musical theater actor, started doing comedy stuff. And then once I started doing my weekly show, I had a space for all of us to come together and like
Right.
every week. And I felt like, yeah, it was amazing. And I think even before pandemic, I could feel it. Like obviously, all these like scenes and groups they have like waves,
Mm.
because eventually people start working. Like Bowen's on SNL and other people doing real things, and there's no time for that. Like, or people move to LA, and I already felt that happening. And now with the pandemic, I'm curious. I'm excited to see what the scene will be like in New York comedy. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Do you ever think you'd move to LA?
No, I really feel so physically sick when I go there. I was just there last week. I had like a mental breakdown. I was like, get me out. I would obviously love to go there to shoot something, and I like to go there to do shows because there's lots of cool people there. But I mean, you and me, we're the same. It's like we're New York girls.
New York
There's
girls.
nothing like it. You know why? Here's my think. Being unemployed in New York is literally romantic. Being unemployed in LA is literally
Hell,
haunted.
hell, yeah.
Haunted. And it's also like erotic to be lonely in New York. It is so bleak to be lonely in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well,
But
because
I'll go for work for those watching.
well, the dream is to ultimately be bi-coastal. Speaking of other places, you also obviously you've done a number of shows in England and the UK, and obviously you were at the Edinburgh Fringe, which does have this like talking about the nexus of comedy and theater hat is sort of that to me.
I
Um,
mean, oh, yes, full body
Tell me
chills.
about it. Tell me about it.
Well, if I lived anywhere else, it would definitely be London. I hope to live there at some point one day. The scene over there is so fucking amazing. They value live performance above anything else, which is not the case here. In the States, it's like they value like your Twitter followers and like everyone kind of wants to be a writer. I don't even know. I don't know what people value here. But in the UK, it's like the pure, like everyone who does comedy over there every summer, this is just so crazy to me. Every summer, they each go, they do an hour every night of new material every summer. I have friends who they've been doing it for they've been doing it for 7 years. Every year, they do an hour of new material by themselves. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm so enamored with everyone over there. They're so brilliant. It's the best.
Of course, that's like where Phoebe Waller-Bridge came from,
Mhm.
who I think also I would describe her as like both a comedian and a theater person. Do you think it's easier over there to do both of those things?
I don't know. I think there's a smaller scene over there and there's
Mhm.
like um I don't know. I don't think there's more opportunities. I just think it's like a smaller crowd.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I really want to live there. Ugh, I want to write something that needs to be shot there.
You've also done a fair amount of TV and film.
Thank you.
Um, Coming from theater and coming from comedy, and as you say, coming from live performance,
hmm
what's the vibe?
I think I've been lucky in that almost everything I've done has been with almost everything has been with like comedians or
Mm,
comedically minded people who are focused on improvisation. So like almost everything I've shot, people have been like, say whatever you want. I think my favorite thing I've gotten to do was my episode of High Maintenance.
so good.
And Ben Sinclair, who directed the episode, I remember he and Katya, who created the show, called me and they were like, we just want you to feel, free to make it your own and really ad lib and say whatever. And it was like a dream come true. Everyone who works in that show is so cool. And
Do you
that's why it's
feel
so good.
do you miss though the live element?
No, it's just a different thing. It's so
Yeah.
fun. It's like, oh, I'm it's just the best and it's hard because like I got to shoot something in when was that? Last month, and as soon as it ends you're just like, "Oh my god, I'm ready for the next thing." And there's so it's you never know when how long it's going to be, when the next role is going to come. It's so, like everything. It's so just such a crapshoot. Yeah, it definitely gets trying. Like I do so many auditions and it's so rare. It's like that feeling when you finally get something. I mean, come on. It's like the best.
Which is interesting because I feel like you moved to New York and were going to be an actor and you were like, no, actually I want to do comedy, but now comedy has like led you back into the audition world in a weird way.
Yeah, and honestly, my goal is literally just still to be on Broadway. I'm like a 3 week stint, Mrs. Lovett. Let's go.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, do you anticipate slash want a return to theater in the like classical sense?
That would be a dream come true. I would think that would be so fun.
Ugh,
I think doing comedy helps me like figure out who I am and like what my strengths are as an actor in a way. It just gave me a confidence that I didn't have. Like I used to go into audition rooms and I would just be like no sense of self, no sense of purpose. And now I'm just walking and I'm like, you'd be lucky to have me.
yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I also think like I talked about this on a podcast I was a guest on recently.
hmm
I think when you graduated from college, we were still in a sort of like cookie cutter actor mode where they wanted to like put people in very specific boxes.
Is it not like that anymore?
Well, I mean, I think it's still like that, but I think,
I would go in, I was like, I don't look like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, every play has one female role and it
yeah,
is for a thin young blonde girl. I'm like, can we make something a little more interesting for once? It's so dumb.
yeah, and I feel like we like just started to get interesting roles for women, just barely.
Yeah, I'm still kind of waiting, but there's some cool stuff.
There,
I cannot wait to start seeing shows again. Like I miss going to the theater so much.
well, there'll be a vehicle, there'll be a star vehicle for you now that you've said on the show and put out into the ether that you want to make a grand return to the stage. I think it's going to come.
I think there'd be nothing more fab than being in a play.
A play
Maybe,
rather than a
well,
musical.
maybe a musical, but it's so hard to keep your voice in good shape and enjoy your life.
That's true. That's true.
When I was singing an hour every night at the Fringe, I was like, wait, sorry, it was I forgot headband. I was a complete hermit. Like I didn't do anything all day. I couldn't.
Yeah, you have to live like a nun.
You have to be a full nun. So I could do that for like, a month, but beyond that, maybe a play.
I've been obsessed with vaudeville since, and like the concept of vaudeville since I was a kid. And I see what you do as like the inheritance of vaudeville.
I'm picturing the amazing baby pictures of little Katie with like the glasses and the boa, and I know that like her and little Catherine would be like best friends.
Best friends.
Yeah.
Are there performers that you have like in the room with you when you either write or when you're performing that you're inspired by?
Share.
I'm obsessed that you said that. But honestly, you guys you do have like similar energy.
I'm so obsessed with her. She's good at everything. She's so glamorous and chic. I think about her. I think about like Kate Bush. I think about Sandra Bernhardt. I think about like there's so many.
These are incredible names. And now that you're saying all
Bette
these,
Midler, obviously.
obviously,
Liza.
the icons and I think these are all women, as you say, who are like cabaret queens who came out in amazing costumes and
Mm-hmm.
sort of were their self themselves, but also characters in this way that you also inhabit in your show. I want to kind of pivot and talk about your poetry.
Oh, thank you. I'm open to pivoting it at any point.
I mean, I always knew because we were both English majors that you were a writer, and but I think obviously you were writing comedy and writing your songs, but that's so different than the poetry you turned out for your book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you view that as like an entirely different side of yourself to the performer theatrical energy, or do you see them as interconnected?
Yeah, I feel like it's literally that's like my true soul, and it's like a relief when I can like stop the performance and I can like leave my body for a second. Like it's so exhausting being so in your body. Like as a performer, it's being in your body is horrible. And when I'm writing the poems, I'm like channeling just pure like soul energy. And it just feels it's like I started doing it because it just like was like therapeutic for me. I didn't really show them to anyone.
Yeah.
And then it became something that I did start showing, and then it has evolved tonally. And then sometimes I can read them at shows and they get laughs, and some of them are just for the page. And yeah, it's my
It,
favorite thing.
it's so cool. What you said at the beginning reminds me of, I feel like the poet, you know how in astrology they say like your moon is like who you are on the inside?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like your poetry is that, and your performance is like your rising sign.
Totally. Yeah, the performance, it's so funny because it's been so long since I've done it, but yeah.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the worst year of my life. Yeah. Not that, and I know I'm not alone in that, obviously.
No, obviously it's been
Everyone's been through hell, and I think,
hell. Do you
but
think,
yeah.
I guess this sort of responds to what we were talking about at the beginning. Do you think performance is gonna sort of go back to square one, go back to normal, or do you think that people's acts and what people are going to be talking about and how they're going to act is going to change?
I'm not sure. I did like my first like small show outside.
Oh, I saw you that night.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it was
Yeah.
like it felt like normal. Everyone was on fire. Everyone was hilarious. It was just like n- no one had missed a beat. It was great.
That's so
And there
exciting.
were of course pandemic jokes, but they were good jokes because they were also just like
Right.
about universal feeling.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the pandemic is like to not talk about the pandemic is like a little weird because it's like the elephant in the room, but you don't want to be like a pandemic comic.
Yeah, I think as time goes on, people aren't gonna want to hear about
Yeah. I mean,
it.
there's
It's
only
like,
so
yeah,
much.
we all agree that sucked.
Yeah, we're all on the same page. So you blend these many different genres. You do all these different things. You're writing, your advice column, how could I forget? Your
I'm
poetry, your
imagine me like, and my advice column. No.
you're singing, you're okay, this siren, so rude.
She's celebrating us, celebrating female friendship over
She's
there.
actually doing a vocal
Yes,
warm
lip
up.
trills.
Your voice is fine. But so you blend all these different things. And first of all, I'm curious, did you set out to do that? Like, were you like, I'm going to make my own path and do all these different things? Or do you feel like it sort of was an accident?
No, I think it's that classic thing of like, I want to be doing this, and no one's, like, what am I trying to say? Like, just the classic thing. Like, there's no one's hiring me right now, so I'm just gonna do it myself and see what happens.
But that's you must realize that's a special skill, being the self-starter, because I think a
Yeah,
lot
I don't think I wanted to. I was like, okay, no one likes me. I'll do like it sucks. And it's still and also it never changes. Like I think there was a time when I was like, well, now that I've like, gotten some real jobs, it's like, no, bitch, you have to keep hustling no matter what. No one cares about you at
yeah,
all,
yeah,
ever.
yeah,
And as much I have amazing agents and managers who are the best in the world, but they can only do as much as you're doing. So
yeah,
it's all up to you, and no one cares about you in a
yeah.
beautiful way.
It's also only personal for you. Like, obviously your agents and managers and our teams like work really hard, but like at the end of the day, you have to rely on yourself mostly.
Yeah, totally. And like and the collaborators you find along the way, like so many people help me do all this shit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a weird career, especially when you're not like, I'm going to be a Broadway chorus girl, because I think that's a little more of a like designated path. But
Yeah.
something like your path, it's so not like being a lawyer where like if you achieve X, you'll
No, it's like being a lawyer, Katie. I'm basically a lawyer. You know that about me.
lawyer.
But don't you feel like now, like no one really like? I feel like now everyone kind of does a bit of everything. Like everyone we know.
I think even like 5 years ago, that wasn't as true.
Yeah, I guess we still know some like actors, but for the most part, everyone I know is kind of doing a bit of everything, and there
And
is no path.
yeah. And I think that's partially because we know a lot of like multi-talented people, and partially because in some ways the business is so terrible that you just have to seek these other things.
But that's why I love that you're doing this show because it's like it's all your skill. It's so many of your skills like put together, and you're using your power for good. You're a great connector. You bring people together.
Thank you. Well, I learned from the best because again, I'm younger than you, so I got to see you do it, and then I did it too.
That's right. And I learned from Ellen and my mom.
That's true. Shout out to our
We
mom.
have we have powerful moms, so we have to give them
Very
shout outs.
powerful, badass businesswoman moms. Very different from us in many ways,
Incredibly different.
but still we learn from them.
Yeah.
Sort of on those lines, I'm curious, do you have, this is like a classic question, do you have advice for people, either for people who want to sort of carve out a multi-path career in the way that yours is, or advice for people who just want to be comedians or just want to be actors?
Yeah, I think the main thing, which is kind of what I was telling you before we started recording, was like you were like, can I and you can cut this if you want, but you were like, I do this as a YouTube show, should I do it as a podcast too? But everyone has a podcast. And I was like, who cares if everyone has a podcast? You don't have a podcast. You should have one.
Right.
Throw out your shit on every platform. It's not embarrassing. No one cares. If people don't like it, they won't engage with it. Just throw stuff out there and see what sticks. So like when I was quarantining in Toronto, I joined TikTok, which is obviously sad because I'm almost 30, but it's like, who knows? I might meet some cool people. I was honestly very inspired by TikTok. So just join the platforms, have fun out there, kids. And beyond that, you know, the main thing is just, I would say, be nice to everyone and make an effort to connect with people who you click with, because having collaborators is such a great way to get stuff done. and to feel inspired. Like doing my podcast with Pat, like he makes me so much funnier.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Finding allies and people you can bounce ideas off of is huge. And other like-minded artists who have similar like goals and creative visions.
And on the other side of that, like the partnerships and stuff, like they also just because when something ends, it doesn't mean it's a failure. These things run their course, and ultimately, it always comes back to you and what you want to be doing. So if something feels like it's too, if something's more like stress than fun, then I would just move on. You know, it should feel good.
Yeah. No, I think that's a hard lesson for a lot of us because I think sometimes we equate stress with success or like
Mm.
challengingness with success. Like it's only a success if it was incredibly challenging. I know that I had to like get over that myself.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm thinking of like the sketch group I told you about with the Princeton friends. Like I remember thinking, well, this can never end because I could never do this on my own. But like that coming to an end because everyone, people went to grad school or they moved cities. It was like that ended and that allowed me to like find my voice as an individual performer. So it's just you have to kind of you got to zoom out, baby, because it's a you know what Larry Owens once told me when I was very depressed because I didn't get some stupid thing that literally no one cares about, but at the time I was very upset. And he was just like he was so calm and he was like, "It's a career, honey." He was like, "It's not a job, it's a career. Like we're in it for the long haul. Just be patient and zoom out."
Someone was recently telling me about a book or something that was distinguishing between a job, a career, and a vocation.
Oh, I was telling you about that.
Oh, you you were telling me. I can't believe I was literally parroting back to you. Someone told me.
I'm obsessed. Well, Pat sent it to me. Um, what is it? I'll find the clip for you. But yeah, that is a helpful reminder because yeah, I mean it can be so hard, I mean, it's like when you're not working, you're like, what's the point? But you're always an artist.
Yeah. No, it can be hard to motivate too when you're not working because it's sort of like why if you're not getting an instant return.
I know that's something I struggle with. I'm sending you this clip while I'm thinking of it. Is I'm putting it in the chat. Something I struggle with is like instead of working on a longer, like I want to write a feature. I have this idea for a feature, but instead of working on that script, I'll just post a stupid Instagram thing because I'll get immediate likes and immediate dopamine and immediate validation. And it's like, girl,
Well, I was going to ask you when you mentioned like put everything on the platforms, put everything on TikTok, and I hope this is not bad that I'm bringing this up, but you and I, before we were recording, we were having a discussion about like sort of the dangers of social media. And
yeah,
I've definitely sort of um, soured to social media this year in many ways, but it's
same.
hard when you're an artist and you're trying to promote things that you do. I just think that's really tough. What do you think about that issue?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult, and I'm in a place now where basically I post and this sounds like totally narcissistic and whatever, but I post and then I don't really look at anyone else's stuff.
I think that's healthy. It's like how
I
Taylor
don't
Swift that literally doesn't follow another person on Instagram.
Yeah, I never watch stories. Those make me feel like shit about myself. I feel very left out. Sometimes I'll scroll through posts and it's tricky because I also like supporting my friends. Like, oh, this is so exciting. You're doing this. But for the most part, I just post and then I go and I delete it off my phone and I re-download it when I want to post again.
I didn't know that about you.
And I took Twitter off my phone, so I just have it on the browser. And I slip up all the time, but like my brain just isn't interested in looking at it anymore.
I think that's amazing and such a like good compromise between those two issues
Well, it
because
makes me feel bad all the time for no reason.
well, yeah, I mean it's all fake. It's all a fake world. We just have to remember that. But I do think, I've had a number of young artists on the show and they're all sort of like social media, we all have to do it. It's necessary for our careers, but I guess that's the compromise that some of us have to make.
I guess so. My literal goal is to be so successful I don't have to be on it anymore and I can just enjoy my life for one single second. But c'est la vie, c'est
I
la
think you'll
vie.
get there. I think you'll get there.
But it is fun, and the other side of it is that I've met so many amazing people on social media, and like the community, for example, around like the podcast Pat and I do, like it's like the funniest, kindest people.
Yeah.
And we just talk on Instagram and I'm like, I love these. Like it's so I'm so grateful for it too. So,
I think
double edged sword. Wait, what does that phrase mean?
double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It means that like on one side there's this nice.
Because in my mind I was like, but isn't a sword bad on both sides? Or I guess it's good
I
if you kill someone who's hurting you.
Now I'm rethinking it, and maybe it means that there are two issues to everything.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the phrase, the idiom I'm looking for escapes me at the moment, but I think I have
I,
an inkling. You know what I'm saying.
I think so too. And I think double-edged sword may actually be correct, and you and I are just overthinking it.
my favorite pastime.
My favorite thing to do. I mean, English
Of
majors,
course.
artists, obviously. Um, I want to wrap us up.
Wait, did you like that book I gave you?
It's up there. I literally finished it in the same night that
So good, right?
it was so good. I have to
Oh,
give it
good. I'm
back
so
to you.
glad.
I
No, don't
put
give it
it
back. I'm
very
just glad
prominently, purposefully for you.
we can plug it if you want. Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan, who's this Irish writer who lives in London and is
It
so
was
amazing.
amazing. I should also mention, I put this on my outline and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to bring this in. And this has nothing to do with theater, but I should just say that, like, I want to talk to you about HBO's Girls on like any platform I can.
I mean, we can talk this. It is one of the greatest shows of all time. If you say you don't like it, you're stupid.
You're wrong.
Lena is a genius. You cannot like her. I don't care. We are lucky to have her. We are lucky to have girls, and we don't deserve it. And now people are recently being like, it was actually pretty good. It's like, bitch, it's been good.
Yeah, like you're just discovering it.
But people love to hate women, especially if they aren't like classically attractive, whatever that means. So
I know. I
I'm
want to
so
listen.
grateful for it. That show changed my life.
Well, I genuinely think probably you are more indebted because it's more similar to what you actually do, but
Hmm.
I genuinely think my life would be different if I had not watched Girls.
I agree. I totally agree. It's the best. It
That
gave me like all adventurous women do, like the freedom that gave me.
I remember when it came out, which was my
Hmm.
senior year of high school, and watching the pilot and being like, I've never seen people capture how my friends and I actually speak with each other before.
Totally. I remember I was in Redacted's bed and I was like, "Can we watch this new show?" And he was like, "Rawr," and I was like, jaw on the floor.
Yeah, change the dynamic forever. And it is my litmus test for like men.
Mm,
If because you don't meet a lot of straight men who like love girls, but if they can tolerate it, if they don't have a strong anti-opinion, if you have a strong negative opinion about girls, I can't.
if that's the case, there's you probably have something missing in your life that can't be filled by hatred of another artist's work.
Agreed. And talk about an artist who, like you, combines all these different things. I mean, I think she's just as brilliant a writer as she's a director and in some ways an actor. Maybe she'll
She
see this.
Oh my god, I love her. I hope I can't wait to see what she does next.
All right, I'm going to wrap things up with,
No. I'm kidding. I'm
you know, we
kidding.
can stay
Anyway,
on
we'll hang out. Okay.
forever. With our Thank You Five segment, which, as I said before we started recording, is our ending segment with 5 rapid fire questions. Just answer off the top of your head. You don't have to answer. I've had some guests who have pleaded the fifth, um, but they're usually not all that controversial. So, my first question, your dream theatrical role.
Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd.
I would literally kill a person to see you do it. Maybe I'll
Thank you.
direct it and you'll star.
Brian as Sweeney.
Yeah, I do think you guys both have to be a bit older.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Best theater memory from either high school or college.
Oh my god. There's so many good ones. My favorite role I got to do in high school was I got to play um Lucy in Stephen Dietz's version of Dracula. And my friend Broadway's Stephanie Styles was played Mina and we played like these best friends and there was this there was this scene in which like I'd just been bitten by the vampire and she like ran into my room to like check on me but like then for the next scene I had to like get the marks off my neck. So we had this moment like in the blackout where she would wipe the marks off my neck with like a moist towelette and for some reason we thought it was like the funniest thing in the world because we're trying to be so still and she's just like cleaning my neck and we would just like shake with laughter, like couldn't breathe. And I always think of that.
That's such a good example of like, I've talked about this in the show before, but I think like 50% of the reason I love theater are those moments backstage that are just like so
Yeah.
funny. You shake with laughter. I was just texting with my friend Jared, who you know, the other day
Yes.
about when we were in Spring Awakening in college. We did this like very weird dance break together. And I don't even remember what we did, but there was one time when we got on stage, I mean, so unprofessional, and we were just shaking with laughter. We like couldn't breathe. And it was a serious moment.
It's the best feeling in the world. That's what I love about it too. You create this world that like doesn't make sense and can't be replicated and you just like never forget it when you're in
Yeah.
a show. A good show.
Especially when you're young, like there's something formative about that.
Oh, totally. Like you're in high school and it sucks and you're stressed out, but then you feel like you're someone else and you're just like, oh,
And you found this community of like-minded people who also find the like weird things hilarious.
yeah. I
Like
mean, we were like 16 or 17 and we're still like the closest of friends.
that's the theater magic that creates those
You know,
friendships.
it's theater is magical, and I think I have to bring up that for so long I was kind of like, I don't like
I
it,
didn't
it's
know you
stupid.
felt that way ever.
I definitely felt that way when I first moved to New York. You know what it is, and this is the last thing I'll say in my entire life, but I think it when you transition from having it be pure pleasure, like in high school and college, to trying to make it a career, of course, that's a bumpy road, and of course, you can become disillusioned. But
I think that's a really good point because there is that transition. First of all, when it becomes like a business, when you become
Mhm.
aware of the business of it, it can be really disillusioning and
Oh,
shocking.
especially when it's like, oh, that person got the role because of this random reason. Like, why isn't it because they're the best?
When it's what we do for a living, it can be hard to turn that aspect of your brain off and just like enjoy the show and not the whole time be like, oh my God, like that girl, she like got that because of XYZ. And I know XYZ about her personal life and this quick change and blah, blah, blah. And I've had to say to myself in recent years, like, turn that off, enjoy it.
Totally. That's how I often get about watching like new comedies that everyone's talking about on TV. Oh my, why am I not doing that? Why, oh, blee, blah, blue, blue. And it's like, who cares? Like, when something's good, it's good. When something's really good, I think that those feelings go away.
Yeah, 100%.
You just like, and that's like, that is what's magical about it. It's like, I don't care how this came together. I'm just so grateful it exists.
Yeah.
That's a rare feeling.
I felt that way when I saw did you see the play Heroes of the Fourth Turning and Playwrights Horizons?
Incredible.
I I hadn't, as you say, had a theatrical experience that I will like remember for the rest of my life in a long time, and that was that for me.
That's how I felt when I saw A Strange Loop at Playwrights Horizons.
I'm so mad I didn't see it.
That was like, I actually, like, I can't even speak. Like, I was in the front row. I was like violently sobbing. I was watching my friend who was like born to play this role just like be so give everything. And I just felt, I was like, this is one of the best moments of my life.
That's the thing about theater though, because you can have such a negative reaction and such a mediocre reaction, but then when it's so good, there's nothing like it.
I agree, baby.
This question is sort of loosely inspired by your podcast and also its sort of sister podcast, Les Culturistas. Is there name one theater thing that you can't stand? Anything in theater.
A theater thing.
Like either something we do or a certain type of thing that someone says in the theater.
I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so much about it that's so annoying.
Like mine would be, I said this on this podcast that I was on, mine would be like jewel tone dress culture.
That's a good one with the nude. I'll
Nude
add nude
pumps.
pumps to it.
Yeah,
And then
nude pumps. We'll end it there.
we'll end it
Um,
there.
and my last thank you five question, ending on a happier note. One thing you learned in theater that you carry with you in the way you do comedy, write, or make art more generally.
Mm, that you only have that one moment, so you might as well have fun.
I'm just remembering one of my favorite stories about you is your senior year of Triangle when we were on
When I
tour.
forgot the lyric.
Yeah.
For those watching, I was supposed to say something about a tree. I completely blacked out on the lyric. And what I sang, literally the words I sang were, and now we're in the show.
It was unbelievable. And I was dancing in the background and just like laughing.
And now we're in the show.
But the reason I think I thought of it is like, even if you mess up,
It was amazing. It was
it was
hilarious.
amazing. I mean, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life.
And now we're in the show.
And now we're in the
It
show.
wasn't untrue.
I believe it was, and now we're in the show, and now we're in the show. You did the riff.
That's crazy. I did not realize.
Catherine, is there anything that you feel I missed or haven't covered?
No, my God, I'm so flattered. You made me feel like $1,000,000.
You breathed fresh life into Call Time, I feel.
Oh my God, I'm honored. Well, I can't wait to share it with the world.
Me too.
And I consider this a sign from God that I think you should also make it a podcast.
We will offline about that. And thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you so much to everyone watching. It's been
Thank you
so
for
great.
having me.
You're welcome. It's been so great to connect with avid theater lovers. That's been the best joy for me in the pandemic. And next week we're doing my second special episode on a soon to be announced play or musical that we'll just focus on. So stay tuned for that. And thank you so much. Bye.